If you're an avid fan of watching FNAF theories, and by FNAF theories I mean game theory, then there are some points you're willing to die on a hill for. Golden Freddy has 2 souls, William cared about his children, and Micheal Afton is the protagonist of Five Nights at Freddy's, and the character we play as in every single game. Well, I think all of those are wrong, but I want to focus today on the protagonist that never was, Micheal Afton. Okay, starting this off with FNAF 1, this one's a bit of a stretch, but the FNAF movie introduced a familiar character, that being Michael, but not Micheal Afton, Michael Schmidt. A lot of fans are under the impression that these two characters are the same, but I wouldn't jump to that conclusion so quickly. We're told throughout every medium of FNAF that the man who killed those 5 kids was William Afton, mixed with the silver eyes and continuities of Fazbear Frights, suggesting other characters always existing in these timelines, just with slight alterations, such as Susie with brown hair inside of Fazbear Frights, or Cassidy in the Silver Eyes having brown hair instead of black hair like she supposedly has in the games. If this is the case, chances are, despite their similarities, that Michael Schmidt is not Micheal Afton, but rather a real existing person in all continuities, and one could argue that Michael is the one we play as in the very first game, but the chances of that are incredibly low. What's more likely is that Michael Schmidt was the name of another Afton victim, or a relative of one, that Michael just stole the name of to get a job at Freddy's, but the chances are never 0. Moving on to FNAF 2 introduces Jeremy Fitzgerald, which most people assume is a different guard after it's heavily implied that he's the victim of the Bite of 87. That led many people to assume the guard we play as on the 7th night, Fritz, is actually none other than Michael. Again, after all, both are fired for the exact same reason, so why wouldn't it be him? Well, that's the funny thing about evidence, it can always be turned around. It is more likely that the note is intended to imply both guards are the same, or it is intended to imply, I don't know, that they have something controlling both of them, like, say, Golden Freddy, who's connected to every single custom night. There's also the argument of Michael's age, which, assuming he's 13 at the oldest during the Bite of 83, it would make him only 17. While it's possible for him to get a job if his father had influence, given William is working as an employee and not a higher position, it tells me he's already been kicked from the company at that point, and wouldn't have the power to hire Mike even if he wanted to. Not to mention, if it was his father's recommendation, why wouldn't Mike just use his real name? While Mike being Fritz was a cool fan theory, I think we'll have to let it rest as we move on to an even more controversial pick. Who is the Fright Guard? I like Mike being the Fright Guard, I do, but the truth is, he doesn't have to be. And to me, it has to deal with only one thing. There is no paycheck or fire slip. And I don't think that's an accident. After all, even after getting his frontal lobe bitten, Jeremy still gets his paycheck. If there was a fire when they knew the place was iffy and ready to burn down, there's no reason to assume that the guard couldn't sue for his pay, nor would Fazbear not rub it in the employee's face that they're fired for burning down the establishment. To me, that indicates that whoever was in the fire had to have died that night. As for the connections to Carlton, thanks to some convincing from mutuals to mine, they think it's heavily implied the minigames are real arcade machines haunted with the agony left behind from the children. After all, those cabinets were in the safe room with William. That would allow anyone to help put the pieces together, not just specifically Michael. And the logbook, as much as I hate to say it, likely isn't intended to be a literal book in continuity. One of my scrapped videos was intended to go over the paradoxes inside of the logbook, but to skip over all of that, take FNAF World for example. The game contains important lore that, yes, is tied back to the main series, but the game itself isn't canon, as it contains Scott Cawthon, and he stated that he himself is not canon. Or the Chica cutscenes in Ultimate Custom Night. Twisted Wolf has never been alluded to in the main continuity, and yet he exists in just this one cutscene. So is it far-fetched to believe this book is tied to canon, but not directly canon? Now we have Fazbear Fright suggesting that Hudson is the Fright Guard, or John from FNAF suggesting Henry is the Fright Guard, which arguably both are good options, and just as likely as Michael being the guard. But at this time, I'm sticking with Hudson being the guard for my own sanity. Moving on to FNAF 4, the logbook would suggest that the person witnessing the nightmares in FNAF 4 was none other than Michael. However, a lot of people were still on the fence about that one. Firstly, you have the encyclopedia, which I personally still don't trust, because it still contains a bunch of misinformation, but it suggests that Bite Victim is the one we play as in FNAF 4. There have been other theories that have come out since the introduction of Midnight Motorist and Dittophobia, suggesting that the person we play as could be Rory, Cassidy, or Andrew. Personally, I believe Michael is still the one we play as, but that these nightmares, the personifications anyway, come from Bite Victim's literal nightmares, and his agony poured into the suits from his plushies. Long theory, go watch the video when you're done. Moving on to Sister Location, don't ask about Sister Location. People thought we played as William, and that copium led to Mic Trap when it was revealed that it wasn't William. It just is what it is. FNAF 6 is a little more tame, as more people agree that Michael is the one we play as. However, a lot of people did question it for a second, given one part of Henry's speech which suggests that the person we're playing as wasn't expected. I think this was more so that the position wasn't for anyone literal to fill. I think it was just Henry expecting anyone off the street to come and take that position, and that Henry didn't actually know what happened to Michael, which is an interesting rabbit hole that we should go down at another time. Moving into UCN, realistically, this game was an add-on to FNAF 6, so we should be playing as Michael, right? No. It did take people a little bit of time to realize, but at some point people recognized that no, we're not playing as Michael, we're playing as William Afton himself. But if that's the case, then surely the person who created this experience must be Michael, right? Well, Michael was technically never killed by William, so the mentions of the one you should not have killed wouldn't work here if that were the case. Let alone, why would Michael keep William alive? And a whole load of other questions. And like that, we're done with trying to make every protagonist be Michael. Surely there's no indirect way people have been trying to force Michael into the modern story. But with that being said, I have a Fall Fest video to finish because I don't want to disappoint Sonic. I'll see you guys all in the next one. Matane.